A Western tale of survival, vengeance, and redemption. The woman crawled out of the desert with 2 holes in her thigh and a secret worth killing for. I should have let her die, would have saved me a lot of bullets. But I didn't know that then. Not yet. The sky had turned the color of dried blood by the time I finished chopping wood behind the barn. New Mexico autumn, 1885. The day had been long and dry and hot like every other that season, but something about the way the air held still made me uneasy, made the hair on my neck stand up like it used to before an Apache ambush. My name is Silas Krenshaw, 42 years old. From a distance, you might think I was younger, but up close, the lines carved into my face tell a different story. 6 years riding cavalry under General Crook left their marks. A scar runs down my left forearm where an Apache blade caught me at Cybeque Creek back in '79. My right knee clicks and grinds every time the weather shifts. Souvenir from a horse that rolled on me during the Victoria campaign. And my eyes. Well, some things you see, you can never unsee. I stood with my hands wrapped around the axe handle, scanning the horizon out of habit, not expecting company. I never expect company anymore. The folks in Las Cruces call me the ghost of Mesa Roja. I earned that name by making it clear I wanted to be left alone. After Sarah and Thomas died, alone was all I could stand. The Pecos River rose without warning 3 years back. Flash flood in the night. By morning, the water had taken everything that mattered. I found them downstream, tangled in cottonwood branches. My wife, my boy, 8 years old. Brown hair like his mother, smile that could make the worst day bearable. I buried them on the hill behind the house, built 2 crosses from cedar wood. Then I rebuilt this ranch with my own hands and waited for something I couldn't name. Maybe death, maybe forgiveness, maybe just the strength to keep waking up each morning. I was walking toward the house with a bucket of well water when movement caught my eye near the dry trail. A figure, low to the ground, too small to be a man, too slow to be riding anything. My fingers released the bucket handle, let it drop. The Colt Army .45 cleared leather before the water finished splashing into the dirt. I thumbed the hammer back and started walking. 30 yards out, I saw her clearly, a woman, barefoot. Dress torn across the back and shoulders like she'd been dragged through mesquite brush. One arm trailing behind her, limp and useless. Knees scraped raw and bleeding through the red dust coating her legs. And on her right thigh, blood, dark and spreading. She didn't look up until my shadow fell across her face. Her voice came out cracked and dry, barely a whisper. "Don't just look, cowboy." Rattlesnake got me between the legs. She swallowed hard, forced out more words. "You know what needs doing. Do it quick, before the venom reaches my heart." I holstered the Colt and dropped to one knee beside her. The wound was worse than I'd feared. Her thigh had already swollen near the top, just below her undergarments. 2 puncture marks sat deep in angry red flesh. The skin around them was hot to the touch, spreading outward like fire through dry grass. Diamondback rattler, close to the femoral artery. Another hour and the poison would reach her heart. I drew the Bowie knife from my belt. She flinched, tried to push my hand away. "I'm not here to hurt you." No comfort in my voice, no gentle reassurance, just truth. She either believed me or she didn't. We didn't have time for anything else. I cut through the fabric of her dress, exposed the wound, leaned in close, sucked hard once, spat blood and venom into the dirt. Again. The taste of copper and something bitter coated my tongue. Her fingers clawed into the ground. A moan escaped through her clenched teeth. 3rd time, 4th, until nothing but clean blood came up. I sat back, cut a strip from her hem, tied it tight above the wound as a tourniquet. Her eyes had rolled back, body gone limp. I gathered her up in my arms. She weighed almost nothing, like a child, like someone who hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Her head fell against my chest, skin burning with fever already. Inside the cabin, I worked fast, cleared the cot, laid her down. The place was one room, stove in the corner, workbench against the wall, bunk near the window. On the wall hung my Winchester 73 and the Sharps 50 caliber Buffalo rifle that had dropped more men than I cared to remember. I boiled water, mixed in crushed poppy root, lifted her head and forced the bitter tea between her cracked lips. She gagged once, then swallowed. Only then did I take a real look at her. Late 20s, maybe younger, maybe older. Hard to tell with all the damage. Spanish blood in her features, high cheekbones, dark hair matted with sweat and desert dust. Sunburned face, blistered lips. But it was her wrist that made my stomach tighten. Bruises, deep purple, almost black. The kind made by rope pulled too tight for too many days. Her ankles carried the same marks, and along her collarbone, half-healed cuts. Thin parallel lines, the work of a man who liked using a knife to make a point. I pulled the wooden crate beside the bed, sat down, drew the Colt and laid it across my lap. She'd been running from something, someone, and whoever had left those marks on her wasn't going to let her go easy. I watched her chest rise and fall, listened to her ragged breathing, slow and steady. Outside, coyotes started their evening chorus. Wind picked up from the north, rattling the shutters. I had a choice. Come morning, I could put her on my spare horse and point her toward Las Cruces. Let her become someone else's problem. That would be the smart play. But I've never been accused of being smart. I settled deeper into the crate, checked the cylinder on the Colt. 6 rounds, full load. Whatever trouble she was running from would find its way here eventually. Men like that always do. They follow blood trails the way wolves follow wounded deer. Let them come. I'd buried a wife and a son. I'd fought Apaches across 3 territories and watched friends die screaming in the desert sun. Whatever was coming couldn't be worse than what I'd already survived. At least that's what I told myself. 3 days passed before the fever broke. 72 hours of changing bandages and forcing water between her lips. Listening to her mutter in Spanish. Names I didn't recognize. Prayers to saints I'd never heard of. Pleas for mercy that made my hands curl into fists. On the 4th morning, she opened her eyes. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and the iron tang of old blood. Gray light leaked through the shutters. I was standing by the stove pouring coffee into a tin cup. My back to her, but I knew the moment she woke. The rhythm of her breathing changed. Easy, I said without turning around. You've been out 3 days. The fever broke last night. I heard the rustle of blankets, a sharp intake of breath as pain reminded her of the wound. How bad? You'll live. Might walk with a limp for a few weeks, but you'll live. I brought the coffee over, handed it to her. She took it with trembling fingers, drank deep, closed her eyes as the warmth spread through her. Who are you? She asked. Silas Krenshaw. This is my land. Has been for 3 years. Rosaria Delgado. A pause. People call me Rosa. We didn't shake hands, didn't exchange pleasantries. She studied the cabin with quick, nervous eyes, counting exits, measuring distances, looking for weapons, the habits of prey. I sat down on the crate, close enough to talk, far enough to show I wasn't a threat. The men who did that to your wrists, I said, they'll be looking for you. It wasn't a question. She met my gaze, held it. Yes. 2 days later, she told me everything. We were sitting on the porch, evening sun turning the mesas into pillars of gold and crimson. She stared straight ahead at the horizon while she talked, voice flat, like reading a casualty report. 3 weeks ago, 8 men rode onto my father's ranch north of Socorro. Didn't announce themselves, didn't make demands. Just started shooting. I stayed quiet. Let her tell it at her own pace. My father was first, shot him through the doorway before he could reach his Winchester. Then our two ranch hands. Old Miguel had worked for us since before I was born. They shot him in the back while he was trying to reach the barn. Her grip tightened on the coffee cup until her knuckles went white. They burned everything: house, barn, corrals. 22 years of my father's life turned to ash in an afternoon. Why'd they take you? Because I saw something I shouldn't have. She turned to look at me. First real eye contact since she'd woken up. I was hiding in the root cellar when they rode in. Through the floorboards, I watched them bury something in the corral. 4 saddlebags, heavy, took 2 men each to carry them. Gold, she nodded. $40,000 from the Santa Fe stage robbery 2 months back. That job, I remembered hearing about it in town. 2 guards shot dead. Driver lost an eye. Gold vanished without a trace. Biggest heist in the territory that year. Harker gang, I said. Virgil Harker himself. Big man, gray beard down to his chest, voice like gravel in a tin bucket. Her jaw tightened, and a scar across his throat. Like someone tried to hang him once and the rope broke. I knew that name. Everyone west of the Mississippi knew that name. Virgil Harker, former Confederate guerrilla. Rode with Quantrill's raiders during the war. Burned half of Kansas before heading into the territories. 20 years of robbery and murder, and never once saw the inside of a jail cell. He figured out I'd seen where they buried the gold. One of his men found my tracks leading to the cellar. They dragged me out. And kept you alive. I'm the only witness outside his gang who knows the location. He planned to... She stopped, breathed deep. He planned to make me draw him a map, his way, then sell me to the Comancheros across the border when he was done with me. But you got away. Billy Ketch. They call him Two Fingers. Lost 3 in a mining accident years back. He was guarding me the night I escaped. Got drunk on mezcal. Passed out with the key to my shackles in his vest pocket. She set down the coffee cup, looked me straight in the eye. I waited until the moon went down. Took the key, took a horse, rode south until the horse gave out. Then I walked. That's when the snake found me. The next morning, I climbed onto the barn roof with my cavalry field glasses. Spent an hour scanning the northern horizon. Empty. But emptiness meant nothing. Harker had survived 20 years by being patient, by being thorough. He'd send scouts first, test the defenses, count the guns. Then he'd come with everything he had. 5 days after Rosa arrived, I found the proof. A canvas feed sack in the barn, slashed open, oats scattered across the floor, and in the corner, boot prints. 2 sets, different sizes. One man heavy, one light. The tracks led out the back and curved north around the mesa. They'd been here, in the night, while we slept. I showed Rosa what I'd found. Her face went pale, but her voice stayed steady. They're here. Scouts, 2 of them, counting our guns, looking for weaknesses. How long until the rest come? Couple days at most. They'll want to move fast before you can reach the law in Las Cruces. That afternoon, we prepared for war. I opened the old cavalry trunk beneath my bunk. Boxes of ammunition I'd been saving for 3 years without knowing why. 45 caliber for the Colt, 44-40 for the Winchester, and 12 precious rounds of 50-90 for the Sharps. The kind of bullets that could punch through a man and the horse he was riding. Can you shoot? I asked her. My father taught me when I was 12, rifle and pistol both. I tossed her my backup piece. Colt Navy 36 caliber, old but reliable. Check the cylinder, 6 rounds, make each one count. We spent 3 hours fortifying, sandbags behind both windows, a shallow trench behind the water trough for a fallback position. trip wires with tin cans strung at both approaches from the north and east. By sundown, I was back on the barn roof with the field glasses. Dust cloud, northeast, 6 riders, maybe more. Moving slow, following tracks. How long? Rosa called from below. They'll camp at Agua Seca Creek tonight. Let the horses rest. Hit us at first light when the sun's at their backs. That night we ate in silence. Beans and salt pork and hardtack. The kind of meal soldiers eat before a battle. Functional, forgettable. Rosa set down her fork, met my eyes across the table. You could leave. Take your horses and ride south. This isn't your fight. I kept eating. I chased Victorio's Apaches across 3 territories, buried 17 men I called brothers. You think I'm going to run from Virgil Harker and a handful of outlaws? This isn't about courage. It's about sense. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I pushed my plate aside. After Sarah and Thomas died, I spent 3 years just existing, breathing in and out, waiting for something to end the waiting. I looked at her. Maybe this is it. Or maybe it's the start of something else. Either way, I'm not leaving. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded once. Words weren't necessary. Dawn came cold and gray. Fog clung to the ground like a burial shroud. I was positioned behind the water trough, Winchester loaded, when the tin cans rattled. 3 shapes emerged from the mist, spreading out as they approached, testing our field of fire. A voice called across the yard. Krenshaw, we know you've got the woman. Send her out and ride away. Nobody needs to die today. I didn't answer, sighted down the Winchester barrel. Last chance. Harker's offering you a deal. Keep your ranch. Keep your life. All he wants is the girl and what's in her head. The speaker was 40 yards out. Center mass made an easy target. I squeezed the trigger. The Winchester kicked against my shoulder. The man flew backward off his horse, dead before he hit the ground. Everything after became noise and gun smoke, and the copper smell of blood. Rosa fired from the window. Her first shot went wide. Second caught a rider in the shoulder and spun him halfway around. I worked the lever, fired twice more. Another man down, clutching his stomach, screaming. The third scout wheeled his horse and ran, blood streaming from a wound in his side. He disappeared over the ridge before I could get another shot off. When the echoes faded, 2 bodies lay in the dirt. The morning sun had burned away the fog. I stood up slowly, checked my ammunition. 3 rounds left in the Winchester. Rosa emerged from the cabin, face pale beneath the sunburn, hands steady on the Colt Navy. That was just the scouts, I said. Feeling us out. How many are left? Harker himself, Billy Two Fingers, 3, maybe 4 more. I reloaded from my belt. They'll come tonight, all of them, and they won't send scouts next time. We spent the afternoon preparing for what was coming. I showed Rosa how to reload the Winchester fast, how to use the sharp scope, how to brace the heavy rifle against the meat of her shoulder instead of the bone, so the kick wouldn't shatter her collarbone. If I go down, I told her while checking the sharp's breech, take the bay mare. She knows the trail to Las Cruces. Find Sheriff Pat Garrett. Tell him Harker's gold is buried at Agua Fria Spring, north side, under a dead cottonwood. Rosa stopped what she was doing. You know where the gold is. You talked during the fever. First night. Kept repeating landmarks, distances, directions. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her shirt and pulled out a folded piece of paper on a leather cord. I drew this from memory, mapped to the gold. Every landmark, every distance. She laid it on the table between us. I was going to trade it to Garrett for protection. Maybe a reward. I looked at the map. Neat lines, careful notations. The work of someone who knew exactly what $40,000 could buy. You were planning to run. I was planning to survive. That's all I've done for 3 weeks. Stay alive one more hour, one more day. I picked up the map, folded it carefully, tucked it into my vest pocket. What are you doing? She demanded, making sure you don't have a reason to run. I don't understand. If we survive tonight, I'll take this to Garrett myself. The reward money goes to you, all of it. Enough to rebuild your father's place. Or start somewhere new, somewhere safe. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You're giving away $40,000 for a woman you met a week ago. I'm not giving anything away. I'm buying something. Buying what? I picked up the sharps, checked the sight alignment, slid a long brass cartridge into the chamber. Ask me again when this is over. If we're both still breathing? The sun touched the horizon at 6:15. They came from the east, used the ridge to mask their approach until the last moment. Smarter than I'd expected. Or maybe just more desperate. 5 riders. I watched them through the field glasses from the barn window. Virgil Harker rode in front. Bigger than I'd imagined. Shoulders like an ox. Gray beard spilling down his chest and across his throat. That scar. Thick as a man's finger. Pale against weathered skin. Billy Two Fingers flanked him on the right. Lean and wiry with eyes that never stopped moving. His left hand was missing 3 fingers. His right hand rested on a holstered pistol. 3 more behind them, 1 tall with a rifle, 1 short with a shotgun, 1 young, barely more than a boy, nervous and twitching. They stopped 60 yards out. Harker's voice rolled across the evening air like distant thunder. Krenshaw, you killed 2 of my boys this morning. That's a debt that needs settling. I was already in position. Sharps resting on sandbags, scope centered on Harker's chest. At this range, the big .50 caliber would punch through him like paper. I know you can hear me. Send the woman out. I'll make it quick for her. Quicker than what I had planned. You can keep your ranch, keep your horses. Hell, I'll even let you keep your life. I steadied my breathing. Or I burn that cabin to the ground with both of you inside. He paused. You've got 10 seconds to decide. I let out half a breath and pulled the trigger. The sharps roared. The recoil slammed into my shoulder hard enough to leave a bruise. The bullet crossed 60 yards in the space of a heartbeat. Hit Harker in the left shoulder, blew it apart in a red mist. The impact knocked him clean off his horse. He hit the ground hard but rolled behind his fallen mount, using the dead animal as cover. The man was tough. I'd give him that much. Then everything dissolved into chaos. Billy Two Fingers spurred forward, torch in one hand, pistol in the other. The coward was heading for the barn, trying to burn out the horses, force us into the open. Rosa saw him from the cabin window, raised the Colt Navy, fired. First shot took the shotgun rider through the throat. He grabbed at his neck, blood spurting between his fingers, and toppled sideways out of the saddle. I dropped the sharps, too slow to reload, grabbed the Winchester, worked the lever. The tall rifleman was sighting on the cabin window. I put 2 rounds into his chest before he could pull the trigger. He folded over his saddle horn and slid to the ground. The young one panicked, tried to run. Rosa's second shot caught his horse in the flank. The animal screamed and reared. Threw him. He hit the ground and didn't get up. 4 down, but Billy Two Fingers was still coming. 20 yards from the barn now, torch blazing, close enough that I could see his yellow teeth bared in a grin. Rosa fired again, hit him in the thigh. He screamed and fell from the saddle, but he didn't stop. Started crawling toward the barn door, knife clenched between his teeth, torch dragging through the dirt but still burning. I stood up from cover, drew the Colt, walked toward him slow and steady. He looked up at me, eyes wild with pain and hate. I put a bullet through the top of his skull. He dropped face first into the dirt, torch sputtering out beneath him. Silence fell over the yard, thick and heavy, the kind of silence that follows thunder. Then Virgil Harker's voice cut through the smoke. "Just you and me now. Krenshaw." He rose from behind his dead horse, left arm hanging useless, sleeves soaked black with blood. But his right hand held a Colt Dragoon, old gun, heavy gun, the kind that could put a hole through a man the size of a silver dollar. I stepped out into the open, Winchester empty, Sharps too, far away, just the Colt army in my hand. 4 rounds left in the cylinder. We faced each other across 20 yards of blood-soaked ground. The last light of day painted everything in shades of red and gold. Long shadows stretched across the yard like fingers reaching for the dead. Harker spat blood into the dirt. "I heard stories about you," he said. "Ghost of Mesa Roja. Man who doesn't fear death because he's already lost everything worth living for. Stories usually lie. Sometimes," he shifted his weight, "getting ready. That woman worth dying for? She's worth fighting for, that's enough." He almost smiled. Blood stained his teeth. "I've killed 41 men in my life. Soldiers, lawmen, ranchers, Indians. Never lost a single stand-up fight." He coughed. More blood. "Always figured I'd die old, rich, surrounded by grandchildren. We don't always get what we figure on." "No, I suppose we don't." We drew at the same time. 2 shots cracked through the evening air, echoed off the mesa walls, rolled across the valley like the judgment of God. Harker was faster. His bullet grazed my right side, tore through my shirt, left a line of fire across my ribs. But I was more accurate. My bullet caught Virgil Harker right between the eyes. He stood there for 1 eternal second, mouth open, eyes wide, 20 years of running and killing and never being caught. And this was how it ended, on a nothing ranch in the middle of nowhere, by a man he'd never heard of until a week ago. Then his legs gave out. He fell backward, hit the ground with a sound like a sack of grain dropped from a wagon, and didn't move again. I stood there as the light faded, blood running down my side, gun smoke drifting through the air. 5 bodies scattered across the yard, the smell of death thick enough to taste. Rosa came running from the cabin, checked my wound. Her hands were shaking now, the battle calm finally breaking. "You're bleeding." "Flesh wound. I've had worse." We buried them that night, edge of the mesa under a pile of stones, high enough to keep the coyotes from digging. Afterward, I stood on the ridge looking down at the valley, moonlight turning the world to silver and shadow. Rosa came to stand beside me. We didn't speak for a long time. "There's a piece of land about 3 miles east," I said finally. "Good water, good grass, belonged to a miner who went back to California. Nobody's claimed it." "That's so?" "That's so." Wind moved through the mesquite. Somewhere distant, an owl called. "This place," I said. "It's too much for one man." "I've got nowhere else to go." "Not anymore." I reached into my vest, pulled out the map, held it out to her. "The reward's yours, all 40,000. Garrett will see you get it." She took the map, looked at it for a long moment, then looked at me. "Maybe I don't want to leave. Maybe you should think about that for a while. Make sure it's what you really want." "Maybe I will." The next morning, I found a piece of weathered wood behind the barn. Spent an hour carving 2 words into it with my knife. Nailed it to the gatepost at sunrise. Rosa saw it when she came out with coffee. Read the words. Said nothing. Just smiled. Safe enough. That was all either of us had ever wanted. 3 days later, riders appeared on the northern trail. I had the Winchester in my hands before they cleared the ridge. But the morning sun caught metal on their chests. Silver stars. "Silas Krenshaw," the lead rider called out. "Depends on who's asking." "Deputy U.S. Marshal Webb. Got a telegram from the governor's office in Santa Fe." He tossed down an envelope. Word is, Virgil Harker's dead, and you're the man who killed him. I picked up the envelope, read it slowly. Rosa came to stand beside me. What does it say? Governors forming a special posse, hunting down what's left of Harker's gang. They scattered across 3 territories after word got out. Their leader was dead. I folded the letter. He wants someone who knows how these men think, someone who's faced them and won. He wants you to lead it. Seems that way. She studied my face, reading something there that I couldn't see myself. Are you going to do it? I looked at the cabin, the corral, the mountains rising blue in the distance, the sign on the gatepost that said, safe enough. Then I looked at Rosa. I spent 3 years hiding from the world, waiting to feel something again. I tucked the letter into my pocket. I think maybe I finally do. That's not an answer. No, it isn't. I turned to the marshal. Tell the governor I need a week to get my affairs in order. Then I'll ride to Santa Fe and hear what he has to say. The marshal nodded, touched his hat brim, rode off with his men. Rosa and I stood there watching them go. You'll come back, she said. Not a question. I'll come back. How do you know? I looked at the sign on the gate, the cabin behind it, the woman beside me. Because for the first time in 3 years, I've got something worth coming back to. She didn't say anything, just reached out and took my hand, held it tight. We stood there together as the sun climbed higher. 2 people who'd found each other in the worst possible way, who'd survived what should have killed them. The territory was full of dangerous men, killers and thieves and worse. Someone needed to hunt them down. Someone needed to make sure what happened to Rosa's father didn't happen to anyone else. Maybe that someone was me. Or maybe I was just a ghost who'd finally remembered what it felt like to be alive. Either way, I knew one thing for certain. I would come back to this place, to this woman, to this sign on the gate that promised something I'd stopped believing in. Safe enough. After everything I'd lost, it was more than enough. It was everything.